Welcome back. It is the only morning show where that's not the only morning show. There's a lot of morning shows, but it's the only one that'll shoot you straight. You know her, you love her, you see her on Outkick, you follow her at Jill_Savage, also Blaze TV. She's a Hawkeye. So at one point, Jill Savage, in this season, you thought that the Hawkeyes, they might not only get in the college football playoffs, but they might get to be number one in the country. What happened?
We were so close, Dan. First of all, thanks for having me on your show. I've been watching, and I loved the Allison Williams interview, so love her. But yeah, as far as my Hawkeyes are concerned, Dan, I can tell you this. This goes back years then. If the media says that Iowa is going to be good at the beginning of the year, don't believe them. The only time that the Hawkeyes are good is when it's like an up-and-coming team that nobody has any faith in. And that's the year that we do well. So at the beginning of this season, myself, my family, my friends were all like, all right, it's not going to happen this year. Too many people are loving on the Hawkeyes. Just go ahead and just resign the fact that it's not going to be a good year. And then
it's funny.
A ton of games, right? They got my hopes up, Dan. That Penn State game, I left all that aside, all the logic, right? Like it's the head versus the heart thing. And I was full in with Iowa and Penn State. And it was so fun, that game. And then the reality set in. So they let us have our fun. They let us believe for a little while. And then they ripped our hearts out.
See, here's what I do, Jill, in football or basketball. I'm like, yeah, I was going to go Iowa. They'll throw away two games that they shouldn't. In fact, one time in Carver Hawkeye, I had their student section chanting, "Docket sucks," because I talk about that, and I consider that a badge of honor. All right, let me go on. You went to Iowa, but you traveled around the country, including the West Coast, now a lot of SEC action. Talk to me about the different regions in the country and whether they like, love, or football, college football.
Yeah, growing up in Big Ten country, that was all I knew. And I just knew, huge stadiums, huge fan bases, huge alumni. And so I just thought, like, this is the way of the world. This is how everyone is across the country. And then for my first TV job, I moved out to Portland, Oregon, and I covered Oregon exclusively throughout the Chip Kelly years. I was there coaching, hosting his coaching show and everything else for that run with the Ducks. And while the Oregon fans were pretty rabid at that point in time because they were winning, they were on the top, the rest of the Pac-12 was a little underwhelming. Like, just to see the size of the stadiums and to see some of the ways that, they wouldn't fill them up necessarily every weekend. And I'm like, some of these are 40, 50, 60,000 seats. And I'm thinking, man, in Big Ten country, you can put 100,000 people in there, and there's still people outside just tailgating, waiting to get into the stadium. So, I mean, on the West Coast, I get it. They are out there, they're hiking, they're skiing, they're at the beach, they're doing whatever they're doing. But it was definitely a culture shock when I first got out to the West Coast. But now with Outkick the Tailgate, we're going around to SEC country, Dan, and they say it just means more. It just means more. It's true. In every sense of the way, like, going through the towns, Tuscaloosa, hopefully we'll get to Auburn here soon. But we were just in Knoxville this last weekend for Georgia, Tennessee, like all of these towns, like it's all that people want to talk about. They know what we're doing. They follow everything. And it's been pretty cool just to kind of get back, because I feel like you look at SEC and Big Ten, and those are definitely the conferences that make the most in the TV revenue. And after going through, right, and just seeing the product and seeing the towns and the way they react, like, of course, that makes the most sense because these fan bases care so much. And anytime you look at the TV rating breakdown, it's always one of those things where you see, like, people in Birmingham, Alabama are always, like, they're watching no matter what. People in Tuscaloosa are watching no matter what. People out there in Columbus, Ohio are watching. So they are always the top of all of the TV ratings.
What's your favorite town? I'm going to tell you, and you know this, my wife and I picked up my daughter in Nashville, drove to Tuscaloosa for the Tennessee game. I totally fell in love with it. Dying to go to Oxford. have been to Columbus for a game, have been to Michigan for a game. But when you travel around the SEC, if you were going to tell people, all right, from the Midwest, a lot of people watching on YouTube from the give me your favorite SEC football, not only football environment, Jill, but football game as well.
Well, the favorite football game and the favorite football environment are going to be two different things this year, because we were fortunate enough to be at Texas A&M when they took down Alabama. We had great seats for it. We were there, and it was one of those things where I believe they were a 17.5-point underdog going into it. And we went to midnight yell the night before. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, Dan, but there's no way to tell you what that's like without actually taking you there. It's different. It's odd. That's the most unique thing. And I'll use unique in a nice way at this point, but that's the most unique thing that I've ever seen in college football. And they were like so into it. The fact that you can get like 30,000 students to go into the stadium on a Friday night at midnight, Dan, to pull these kids away from the bars and get them into the stadium to practice their cheers, to say, hey, look at us. We're going to make a huge impact on the game, whether we have a chance or not. We're going to come here and do what we can do. And we were all just like looking around.
Can I stop you?
Yeah.
Is that a cult?
It is. Yeah.
It seems cultish to me.
That was kind of what we were all walking away saying. It's like, okay, like they are all on the inside. We are definitely not in there.
Right.
And when you can see it from the outside looking in, when you have that advantage, it felt very cult-like. So that was still the best game because they were completely into it. And I do think like there are schools, there are programs all across the country that would die for a fan base that was that into it, right? Like there are coaches across the country that are hoping for that. But feels very cult-like.
Okay.
I will say the next one that I would say, Tuscaloosa, the first game that we went to, we were there for the Ole Miss game. And me and my co-host, we all liken it to like walking into a church service. Like nobody was like yelling and screaming like, let's go Bama or anything like on the walk into the stadium. It was a very business-like approach. Everybody just walked in. They knew what they were going to see. Their team was going to beat down on Lane Kiffin, and they were all going to go out to the bars and celebrate and carry on with their weekend. I will say the second time we were there is when you were on our show out on Outkick the Tailgate for the LSU game. And they had already lost once then in the season. So that was a much better atmosphere. Plus LSU was making a game of it. So I would say that second go around to Tuscaloosa felt a little bit more like what I expected when I was going to walk into an Alabama football game.
Here is me. I don't know if you can see this. This is me in front of the Sigma Nu House in Tuscaloosa. My daughter's Instagram, he just made himself at home at SNU with a plate of food. I found where the buffet was at the Sigma Nu House, made myself comfortable, had a couple drinks, and had a wonderful time. And I'm not a Sigma Nu. I don't even know what a Sigma Nu is. But that's what I did.
It doesn't matter. That's the best part about going around to all of these different colleges. They're welcoming you in, whether they know you or not. If you just walk by, they're like, hey, do you need a drink? Do you want some food? We have plenty. Don't worry. You don't need to go buy anything. We have plenty right here. We'll take care of you. Oh, you have to go do a show? We'll be here in another 3 hours. Come on back.
Right. And then, all right, I did not know this, Jill Savage. I had no idea that you could turn the stadium lights on and on. It's like a freaking disco before the kickoff. I had no idea of this. None. So that was one of the coolest things. I have a lot of videos on my phone of this because I was enthralled by this. It was like kind of a nightclub, kind of a football game all at once. That was pretty cool. And I don't understand. I really want this to take off. And I want all of the other stadiums across the country to do this because it was really enjoyable. Jill, I didn't know you could do that. Like
it felt like a basketball game, right, Dan? We see that all the time for basketball games.
It did. I'm telling you, and I know I got a lot of people in the Midwest sitting here going, oh, man, I would love to go to that goal. And particularly from Indianapolis, it's a 7.5-hour drive. I can do 7.5 hours backwards. It's the freaking Autobahn between Louisville and Nashville. You can go 120 miles an hour. No cops. Kentucky got more important things to do than worry about speeding. They don't care.
Dan, you and I are true Midwesterners because we're like, oh, 7.5 hours, 8 hours. We'll drive it. It's fine.
I can do it. I can do it in my sleep.
I actually drove out to Alabama and back both times.
Where do you live? Where do you stay?
Dallas.
What kind of drive is that?
8 hours, but it's one interstate the whole way.
Right.
It's easy.
Hey,
people hear that and they think that we're crazy. And I'm like, no. It's fine.
Indianapolis, the directions are get on I-65 south. Don't get off until you see, I think it's 52 or whatever, in Birmingham. Take a right, and you're in it. That's it.
That's it. It's easy.
That's it.
Who needs it?
And I'll tell you what.
Who needs an airplane?
Yeah, go to the Sigma Newhouse on Saturday morning. It's all right. Alabama, Georgia. When they play, who wins?
I think Georgia right now, just because of the way that Alabama played against LSU, I wasn't totally sold on them. And I think that Nick Saban, when you hear him, the way that he's talking at post-game interviews, I think that he acknowledges where his team is. And this isn't one of the Alabama teams that we've seen the last 2 or 3 years. And Georgia, I think it will have to have such an off performance, because I think that when Georgia is going to have a bad day, I still think that's going to be better than what Alabama is going to be bringing into that SEC championship game.
What makes Georgia so good?
Well, I mean, the defense, you have to be able to score points on them, Dan. That's very difficult for them to do. We thought that this was going to be the weekend, this last weekend against Tennessee, right? Josh Heupel, his offense, they had it going. And, they were able to stay with them at first. But this is what Georgia does, right? Like they gave Tennessee a little bit of hope, and then they just crushed them because nobody can sustain a game for 60 full minutes against Georgia. And we've been having this conversation all year long. Like, is it going to be Stetson Bennett or JT Daniels? And I think, like, when you look at the Heisman race, there's no Georgia quarterback in the Heisman race, right? Like when you see what's going on in college football, it's usually the quarterback on the best team. But Stetson Bennett, everybody calls him a game manager, and kind of rightly so. He hasn't been pressured to go out there and make huge plays at the end of the game. They are never in game winning, game pressure situations in the fourth quarter. So they can go out there and kind of coast on offense because they know that if they have their defense that's going to go out there and just stifle their opponent. So it doesn't matter. You could put Stetson Bennett in. You could put JT Daniels in. It doesn't matter. Georgia is that good, and they are the clear-cut number one team this whole season, and it hasn't been close. They've never let up. They've never given anybody that sense that they can hang this season, and that's been the most impressive thing.
I loved watching Tennessee played Alabama until the fourth quarter when they made some mistakes in Alabama. I thought Alabama's offense was terrific. All right, you ready, lady? We're going to play some Big Ten hot takes. Now,
let's do it.
The first one, the first one is kind of a local thing. And people that don't know are going to tell me I'm wrong. And you may not even know this, but the first hot take, number 5, in the last 3 weeks, Aiden O'Connell, the Purdue quarterback, has been the best quarterback in the Big Ten. Do you know the name Aiden O'Connell? And I'll tell you why you shouldn't.
I do, just watching Big Ten football the way that I do. Right. Yeah.
I'm telling you why you shouldn't, though, because he was one of 3 quarterbacks. You know what I mean? Like, people are like, well, is that the Plummer kid? Who's the,
Right. I think most people would still think that Plummer was the quarterback.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I did not know. In fact, I was driving back and I was listening to the Michigan State game, and I'm sitting there going, all right, O'Connell's, which one is he now? You know what I mean? Like, is he the thrower? Is he? Listen to this over his last 3 games. Now, last 3 games, they won at Nebraska. All right. He was 34 of 45. 76%, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. They played number 3 Michigan State, and he set records, 40 of 54, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 536 yards. And then against Ohio State, he goes 40 of 52, which is 77%, 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. I mean, damn. That's good teams in tough environments, and the kid has played fantastic. And I don't think a lot of people know who he is. I don't.
I'm with you. And I will give you the last 2 weeks. If you took the last week out, because CJ Stroud had 5 touchdowns against his Purdue team. And I understand Aiden doesn't play on defense. It's not his fault that CJ Stroud went out and had 5 touchdowns on him. But yeah, I will say if you look at that, the last 2 weeks before that, for sure he was the best quarterback. But CJ Stroud, I'd have to give him the edge at least for this final weekend. But I was watching your show earlier, and you're on the David Bell train, just like I am. Now, being a Hawkeye, I'm excited to get rid of this kid at some point because I've had enough of him. He's too good. Yes. We need him to go ahead and play on Sundays instead.
I don't know if you could see my background went out when I was talking nice about Purdue. But as an Indiana guy, Jill, the deep state comes for me when I talk Clintons, when I talk about anything, make fun of the far left, or if I talk about Purdue. The deep state just shuts me down.
I'm right there with you, Dan.
All right. This is going to hit near and dear to your heart and near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
Indiana University ranked 17th to start the season, and Iowa, which got up to number 2 this season, were the most overrated teams in America at one point. Indiana before the season, Iowa when they got to number 2. What say you?
Well, I think our teams actually faced each other in week 1, Dan, and it was the thing that set off all of this madness.
I know.
The preseason rankings, this game against Iowa and Indiana is the exact reason why you should not put that much stock into preseason rankings, because Iowa went out. They had 2 pick sixes in the first half, right? When they had the 3rd interception.
First 2 throws, whatever.
It didn't. Yeah, when we got another interception and they didn't run it back for a touchdown, I was disappointed, right? We had levels of expectations that Iowa fans should never have had, because Iowa usually slow plays it. They're non-conference games. They don't let any of their offense out. Like they have a huge offense to roll out anyway, but that's for another day. Yes, I will say Iowa and Indiana were the 2 most overrated teams, and it all stems back to week 1.
I agree. Hey, look. I had never seen in my lifetime. Now, I went to, I was 17 years at Indiana. I go back, man, when I was a little kid, went to Indiana games. I've never seen the energy and excitement for IU football like before this season. And that first quarter, I'm being literal here, ended it.
Yeah.
Over. Done. By the way, Bill Martin.
It's finished.
Over. Bill Martin, one of our faithful YouTube listeners out in Colorado Springs, with a fun Aiden O'Connell fact, Jill Savage. AOC, they call him. Started his college career.
Don't do it.
I won't. The real AOC.
There.
Started his college career at Wheaton College and was a walk-on at Purdue. There you go. Thank you, Bill Martin, on our YouTube stream. All right, number 3. This affects Iowa. As compared to most big conferences, the Power 5, the Big Ten West is embarrassing.
Oh, that's a fact.
That's a fact.
I will say, when Iowa was placed into the Big Ten West, and we saw that Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State. Well, they're all in the East.
Indiana,
right? Yeah, I mean they have to beat somebody, so they had to throw Indiana over on that side as well. Right. But when I saw that, and I said, so it's really it's Iowa and Wisconsin that they have to fight it out for the top of the Big Ten West every year. Hey, as an Iowa fan, Sign me up all
Right.
day for that. Have you noticed? So the Pac-12 commissioner, the new Pac-12 commissioner, came out and said that he's looking at potentially getting rid of the Pac-12 North and South divisions. It's at a place now where, especially during COVID last year, where they didn't know, is the team going to be able to play or not, and there were stipulations in place that if this team couldn't play, then maybe you would have two teams from the South actually facing off. And so I think that kind of opened up everybody's mind going, well, do we really need a team from this side and a team from that side when we're just making it up anyway? Like everybody, we're constantly changing conferences now. Texas and Oklahoma are now going to join the SEC. So they're going to have to change everything. Do we need divisions anymore? I mean, it's nice little scheduling perk, but at the end of the day, like, hey, again, being in the Big Ten West, let's keep them. But
the divisions, the reason I like divisions is to make sure that there's rivalries, because I think college basketball has really hurt itself by not having rivalries on campus sites in December. All the games are neutral sites. I want to make sure that Michigan and Michigan State play. I want to make sure that Indiana plays Purdue. But I totally get the point, and I totally get it as an Iowa fan. Man, nice to be over there. Purdue fans are ecstatic. Indiana fans, like, we draw a line. You go down I-65, and I guess Purdue's a little bit west of Bloomington, which is, I guess, but boy, we'd like to move Bloomington. All right, next one. And you mentioned C.J. Stroud. I have C.J. Stroud as my favorite for the Heisman Trophy over Bryce Young and Walker II. Those are the only three that I'm considering. What say you?
Yeah, I think this year it's been interesting because we already hit on the Georgia quarterback is not going to be invited to New York, is not in the conversation this year with so many upsets, more than we've seen in recent years. It's been very difficult to have a very elusive run for the Heisman Trophy race. It's been just a couple of guys, right? At the beginning of the season, it was Bryce Young, it was Matt Corral, it was Spencer Rattler at Oklahoma, right? And we can see how far things have moved throughout the season. So when you do say somebody like CJ Stroud, I don't think that you're that far off, because I think that when you look at Ohio State, I think that they are going to be ultimately one of the four teams, most likely, that gets into the college football playoff. And Bryce Young, I think Alabama is Alabama, whether they have him at quarterback or anybody else at quarterback. So when you look at what does he mean for his team, CJ Stroud has definitely made huge strides, because Ohio State has gotten better since the beginning of the year. Some of it's been on defense, but CJ Stroud getting that offense right has been a huge part. So I'm kind of with you. I would put him as one of the, probably my main front runner at this point in time.
No kidding. I thought I'd be called a fool. I did. I mean, I've been called a fool before, but all right.
It's just because the way that Alabama's offense had struggled against an LSU team with a banged up defense that we know Ed O is out at the end of the year, right? Like, when I look at that, I say, like, you can't really say, oh, this is the performance that is going to take you and put you on the top of the list for the Heisman Trophy race.
But I also think, and I said this earlier, and I'm curious your thoughts, that's like everything else in the Midwest as it pertains to football, coaching careers, players' legacies, Heisman trophies, extensions. I think it all comes down to Ohio State, Michigan for Stroud. I really do. I think it comes down to that. Don't you?
Yeah, and I think the fact that Ohio State is going to have two marquee games to end the season before you get to the Big Ten championship game, everybody is going to be watching Ohio State, Michigan State this weekend. And everybody, whether Michigan's good or not, year in and year out, everybody watches Ohio State, Michigan.
Okay, to that point, Jill Savage, I think there is a chance. I'd put it at about a quarter. And I don't know if this is a hot take. It is possible that the Big Ten gets 0 teams in the college football playoff based on who plays who.
I'm going to say here, I'm in Dallas, so just, a few miles away from me. Grapevine, they're meeting for the college football playoff rankings. The committee is over there. I promise you, they are going to do everything they can to make sure that at least one Big Ten team makes it into that Final Four. We talked about, the viewership and the alumni and the fan bases and everything. Man, if you didn't have a Big Ten team in the college football playoff, that would be a big miss for them. But I can see what you're saying, because, if Ohio State loses to Michigan State or Michigan, and there's enough chaos this year,
right,
in college football, it's not clear cut that it's definitely going to be Ohio State that will make it in there. But I think,
let me ask you this:
if you're giving them truth serum just up the road from me, they're hoping that the Buckeyes just go ahead and take care of business and coast all the way through. Because we've now seen a couple of teams fall out, right? Oklahoma lost to Baylor over the weekend, so we don't have to worry about whether they're ranked 8th or not anymore, and if they're going to be jumping up. So, Cincinnati, Notre Dame, they're still lingering out there, and I think the committee would be okay with them taking a loss or two.
Well, I agree with everything you just said there. Michigan, Ohio State, would you agree that's an elimination game?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Ohio State, Michigan State, elimination.
Michigan State this weekend, yeah.
And then Michigan, Ohio State, elimination game.
I think that it depends on.
Because you think you would take? Would you take a 2-loss Big Ten team over an 11-1 Notre Dame team?
See, and that's going to be. Well, I look at it the way that the committee has already ranked Oregon over Ohio State, because Oregon beat them in week 2 of the season, and then they completely threw that out with Michigan State this last week in the playoff rankings. For whatever reason, they really want to hold Oregon over Ohio State. They are weighing that win for Oregon more than any other win this season. So I think that if Ohio State lost again, you might be right in that it would be an elimination for them. They would have to look spectacular if they lost this weekend, then the next weekend against Michigan and in the Big Ten playoff. They would have to leave no doubt that they could come out and say, okay, this is it. This is the way that Ohio State actually is playing right now, and forget what we did 2 weeks ago.
I think it would illegitimize a committee to put a 2-loss Ohio State team in. Not that they would have to, over an undefeated Cincinnati team. I think a lot of people would have a real problem with the legitimacy of it. But you know what, Jill? I think it's all going to play out. I say it all the time. This stuff seems to always play out. Hey, you're fantastic. You got to come on every week. What are you talking about? What are you doing?
I'm here. You call me. Give me a ring. Let's go.
I'm gonna. That was great. Even my Midwest people that don't really care about football now that Indiana stinks are like, man, this guest is great. Holy cow.
We can actually talk some Big Ten football. It's awesome.
Yeah. Jill, you're the best. Hey, where are you guys this week with the Outkick game day?
We are going to be back in Nashville this weekend. The guys are getting a home game.
Very nice. Very nice. All right. Thanks, Jill. Have fun.
Thanks,
Thank
Dan.
you so much.